And welcome back. How's everyone getting on?
All doing good. So today we're joined by Rachel Kimsey. Rachel, you've been a big part of the Call of Duty games and plenty more. I had to write down the games you're in so many. Call of Duty Ghost, Infinite Warfare, Black Ops 3, 4, and Cold War. That's a lot. But obviously that's not all you do. So how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Rachel Kimsey. I've been playing in the voice acting world for the last 10 years or so. I've done a lot of stuff in the Call of Duty world, which has been really fun. I've played in Halo and in Into the Wilds. There's been a bunch of fun things in games. I got to live my childhood dream of being a superhero on Justice League Action. And now I'm living my mom dream where I'm narrating a whole bunch of toddler books for Disney, where I'm teaching little kids how to read. So it's a nice full circle thing. I've got a whole bunch of stuff I'll probably never let my children see, and then a whole bunch of stuff that I funnel toward them now. It's a nice place to be, right in the middle.
Is that a worry for you, like that your kids may like see you in these games and get the wrong impression, or in other things you've done?
No, you know what it is? The truth is, it's not that I would never let my kids play these games. It's not that at all. It's that by the time they're old enough to play these games, they'll be like, oh my gosh, Mom, that technology is so old. Like by the time they're old enough that it's appropriate for them, they'd be like, that would be like me playing Pong going, oh, that's really cute, parents, that was your game back then. They'll be like, no, that's old. I have no idea what games are going to look like by then, but inevitably, like they've changed and developed so fast, they'll be like, we're good.
Have you heard of those haptic feedback suits? So like, there's these things in games, you get shot in the game, and it like, that must fucking hurt.
I'll tell you, I remember when like the Rumble controller came out, and that seemed like the most intense thing, because you're like, oh, when I go over a thing, I can feel it in my hand. The idea of like feeling it in my body when I get
I don't know where Jared's gone, but clearly he's doing something menacingly.
Yeah, I'm that person that like gets invited to go play paintball and goes, that sounds like so much fun. I don't like getting shot. I
love paintball.
I don't enjoy getting shot. I like jumping off of buildings. I like falling down. I've been lit on fire. I've done stunt work. I'm all for that, but I don't like getting shot. And I don't like getting punched in the face.
That's I guess you could say that's reasonable.
Yeah,
but,
Thank you. Everybody needs to draw their standards someplace.
Any kind of virtual reality is crazy. Those haptic suits you're talking about, absolutely insane. We explained that to Bruce Thomas, and his mind was blown. Tried to explain that to Dr. Dave Hill, and the last game he ever played was Pong. That was the last game he played.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So funny you brought Pong up. But yeah, I've been using this thing, the Oculus headsets, cool. And oh my God, you look like a fool when you're using it.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
It's just amazing.
The part that blows my mind, I played the simplest VR game I think that's ever invented. You literally just get in an elevator and go up, and when you get to the top, there's like a board that you walk out on.
Yeah, it's called Plank.
Okay, great. I watched 3 other people do it. I watched what it looked like from inside through the monitors. I put the thing out, and I swear to God, you guys, I couldn't do it. Like my heart was pounding. My body was just like, no, you can't walk out there. Like, I know how it works. And my body was like, no. And I like to tell myself that's why I'm a good actor, because my suspension of disbelief is very powerful. But also maybe I'm just a coward. I don't know. But I was like, okay, that was intense enough. I'm not sure that I'm emotionally capable of playing like a first-person shooter game in a virtual reality world. I was like, I can sit in the ocean and watch a whale swim by. Like I'm down with that. But I'm like, I don't know if I can tolerate a zombie jumping out at me from behind a wall. I might have an actual heart attack.
That one's a bit rough in all fairness. It's cool stuff the way video games are going, and it's amazing that you get to be a part of that. We're the consumer, but like you're part of the production, and it's amazing.
Really exciting.
You've done so many games, and big ones too. Like you did Horizon Zero Dawn. That was a huge game when it came out. Some of the best graphics people ever seen.
I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a really replayable game because of how much you can do in the world. And I'm definitely a narrative storyteller person. Like I struggle in sandbox games because I'm like, because I grew up on the NES and I'm like, I need a game that tells me where the beginning, middle, and end is. Like I need to go get the Triforce. Like I need to rescue the princess. But there's something about like, oh, I can like collect supplies to make arrows to go hunting. Like,
yeah, that's cool.
Okay, like that's cool. I think it's pretty.
I really like those kind of games, like open world games, like Spider-Man, God of War. They're all great games. They're super good.
And you know, it's funny you bring up that you need a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, because you took part in one of the most confusing Call of Duty games ever.
Yeah.
Black Ops 3. And it was a great one, absolutely. But the campaign was one of the most confusing things ever. So it must have been weird.
You know what's the thing that's wild about it is we didn't get the story from beginning to end while we were doing it. So if you thought it was confusing seeing it through in a narrative arc, like we started in the middle and then took something from the beginning and then some from the end. And then like we bounced around all over the place, putting it together. And so there were times where we'd come in and like, we just have to sit there and we'd have to have a powwow with the director for like 15 minutes before going, okay, so what has happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so that other thing that hasn't happened yet. And what are we doing now? And like trying to figure out where we were within the story. But if I told you that it has a bit of a Fight Club element, does that help with the Taylor situation?
It actually does, yeah.
There's if you think of Taylor as Tyler Durden, it kind of helps sort out the story a little bit.
Yeah, the general consensus is that when it was written on crack. But
well, it was written by a Scotsman, so it's entirely possible. You never know.
There you go.
I adore him. He's the best.
Like the Scots are kind of like the less cool Irish, in my opinion, being Irish.
It could have been worse. It could be.
My very biased
written
opinion.
by a Welshman. I mean,
we don't want to get into the Welsh. We'll keep them out of it now. Don't want.
Yeah. But yeah, no, cool game, and you know, it was cool you got to take part in it and be such a big character. So how did you prepare for that role? This obviously wasn't your first time in a Call of Duty game.
So it wasn't my first time in the Call of Duty world, which was really helpful. But it was my first time mocapping a job this big. And motion capture and performance capture is a really different experience than being in the studio doing voiceover. But I had done Call of Duty as voiceover and I had done motion capture on other things. So when it came time to marry the worlds, it just started to make sense. The thing that was really interesting about that game in particular for me was everything that had been told to me at some point in my career that was a negative about me was exactly what they needed for this game. Like it's well, so like there was one day where the director came up to me and he said, "Oh, thank God you don't have Botox, because if your face wasn't moving, we wouldn't be able to see anything." And there's this feeling, right, in Hollywood of like, you have to stay young and perfect forever. So people start freezing things, right? But if you freeze a part of your face, then the markers don't move, so they don't get any information. I had decided, I was like, I'm not that girl, so I'm not doing that. So instead of somebody going, "Don't you think you could look a little younger?" they were like, "Oh, thank God your body moves," right? I had been told I was too tall, that I was too muscular, that my voice was too deep, that my voice had too much texture, that like all, not on every single job, but like at different times, people were like, "Oh, we'd love to have you for this, but," and all of those things were what they needed on this game. I come from a military family. I am not military. I always want to make that clear, but my brothers are, my aunts and uncles and cousins and grandfather, like it's in my family DNA and language, and to be able to use that as part of the fluent language of this place and feel like I was honoring people that I loved was really, really powerful for me. I know that one of the things that happened is when I showed up for the very first audition and I picked up in motion capture, we have these solid rubber guns. They're very, very accurate looking, and they're very heavy, which is pretty accurate to real life. But they're solid. There are no moving parts, so you know that they're safe. And I picked it up, and they looked at me and were like, "Oh, that's not the first time you've picked it up before." And I was like, "No, it's." And that makes a difference. It makes a difference when you come in with something in your body language and something in, you know, the back of your mind. I wasn't pulling my references from language from other video games I've seen in other movies. I was pulling it from my family. You know, the movement was things that I've done with my brothers and my father and my sister out in real life. And I am not as proficient at it as them, but it wasn't the first time I'd ever done it. And so those kinds of things really served on this to just feel like I could drop into the world and didn't have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And that was really fun. It was nice for all of the things that made me to be what was needed, and that I didn't have to change myself for the work, which was really rewarding.
Yeah. And what you're saying there about, like, you know, the Botox and you can't really move your face, that is a really toxic standard in that industry. That is rough. I honestly, I would hate to be a woman in that industry.
It's
your confidence must
not
be
easy.
destroyed. Like these expectations being pushed at you, it must be rough.
It's a really different world than men are asked to live in. It is only a heightened version of what women are asked to live in the regular world. And it's toxic and it's poisonous. And I want to be part of the point of the spear that's about changing it by not doing those things, but continuing to forge ahead. But it takes a certain amount of self-regard and resilience to just say, your opinion about my forehead does not determine how I feel about myself.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Also, 100%. 22 is not the ideal age for everything.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
It is a perfectly fine age, but so is 32, and so is 42, and so is 72. So maybe there are more stories out there to tell.
There you go. And then going back to your family experience with the military, obviously that was a big hand, and I guess competitive edge. And I'm assuming, like, being in these different, like, first person shooter games, that's helped overall.
I think so. It's funny. It's not like it was dinner table conversation growing up. My dad was one of his siblings that didn't go to a military academy. But my grandfather was a general, and my aunts and uncles all went to academies. And my aunt was one of the first women to go to the American Air Force Academy. And but when my little brother decided to join the Army, we all went, "Wait, what? But you're like the sweet one," but which says something. But he is lifetime career and he loves it, and knowing him and meeting the people that he works with. And then my older brother went into the Air Force a little bit later, and knowing him and meeting the people that he's worked with. And I joked that if you were my friend in high school and you were Italian, you joined the Marines. I don't know why. All of my friends with Italian last names, they all joined the Marines. And going through the Gulf War with them, then I just aged myself, was a really profound experience. And it made those relationships personal. It made their experiences personal. There are some movies I still can't watch because they just feel way too close to home. Because I can't separate myself enough from the story to get through it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
It's mad how similar you are to another actor we had. His name Al Cornell, and he plays Garcia in Cold War, and he was telling us how his military background really helped him shape his character and how it.
But in all fairness, so did his salsa career.
Yeah.
Salsa career?
Yes.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have
Apparently
to
he could do that in the military too, which blew my mind.
He danced in the military, and then he included that. Though he has like an emote in the game where he dances. It's great.
That's amazing. I'm gonna have to go check out that episode because I want to learn more about that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the funny thing, you know, like again, like I want to be clear, I wasn't, you know, in the military, so I certainly don't want to, you know, take any credit from the people who've actually done that job, but it not being foreign to me made a difference. And I, you know, I started doing stunt work when I was in college, and so being used to, you know, getting punched in the face and falling off of buildings and getting lit on fire and, you know, rolling around on the ground, like that stuff all helped because I wasn't afraid to live in my body in an athletic way, which is different than, you know, here's how you make a pretty picture on a screen, which is a really valuable skill. But I also like getting punched and falling down part. That part's fun for me.
So what you're saying then is how you make it in the entertainment business is just be set on fire. Take that down, Jared. That might come in useful for us.
That might be useful.
That's clearly the takeaway.
Yeah. Actually, we had a guy on before, Keanu Lam, and he was in Deadpool and a bunch of other things, Shazam, and he was talking about how little you get paid to be set on fire, and we were absolutely appalled.
Yeah.
Like that could seriously fuck you up.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a surprisingly simple technical skill, but if it goes wrong, it goes so wrong. Which is why, like, I would always joke. I was like, I will drive a car, but I won't crash a car. I'll do a back burn, but I will never do a full body burn. Like, and people are like, yeah, but this is a super controlled environment. I was like, yeah, but it's just not worth it to me. Like,
do you want to take that risk?
There are people who are better at this job who are happy to do that. Hire them and pay them well. I'm gonna draw my line just a little bit earlier because I'm good. I don't need fire in front of my face.
You know, it could change your life forever, and not in a good way. It's rough.
Fire rarely does.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cool you do that stuff. And you know, being an actor and a voice actor, how did you get into the business?
I was one of those kids that just knew from really early on what I wanted to do with my life. That path did shift over time. You know, at first I thought I wanted to do classical theater forever. I was like, I'm going to do Shakespeare in the park all over the world. And then I made my first movie and I was like, oh, making movies is awesome. And then my first like big break was doing a soap opera on TV. And I was like, oh, getting to go to work and make an hour of television every day is really cool. And then, you know, I started doing radio commercials and I was like, this is a really fun, tight way to do an entire story in 15 seconds. And then that continued to just build. This isn't an acting advice show, but if I had some advice for somebody who wanted to do this, it's keep your eyes open. If you're so fixated on only wanting to do one thing, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities. Because my career is definitely zigged and zagged all over the place, but I've stayed working in a variety of different ways since the beginning because I didn't define being an actor as being a movie star. I defined it as being an actor. And that looks like a lot of different things over time. At one point, that was doing a live stunt show in Taiwan and falling off of buildings. And at one point, you know, it was sitting with a broken leg in a recording studio doing voices for Spider-Man, the video game, because I was like, well, I can't be on camera, but here with a broken leg, I can sit in this studio and I can participate in this world. So it's a lot of it is about being flexible and being creative and being open to how the world will change around you and how you can change with it.
Yeah, that's pretty inspiring. You know, in acting or entertainment overall, you don't really stick with one thing. You'll very, very rarely find someone who's only a voice actor, only a TV actor, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, if they do it, it's because they hit something big. But generally, most actors are doing everything. And, you know, looking at your IMDb, it's clear you do everything. And you do it well as well. And like you've played some iconic characters like Wonder Woman. I know there's a bit of controversy with that movie recently, but you did the animated one. Have you seen the new one?
I have small children, so I have not been able to see it yet.
That's fair.
I was like, I want to watch it opening weekend, and then we have the Roku, so we couldn't get HBO on it because they hadn't updated. So we're like, okay, as soon as it's on, we're gonna do it. And I have a baby who's cutting teeth right now, so nobody's sleeping. So the idea of scraping out an extra hour and a half to do anything else has been really tough. But I am determined. I'm gonna get it in. I saw the last one on opening day.
Last one's really good. The original Wonder Woman's great.
Loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I was kind of avoiding it because of all the controversy I've seen. But,
see, now, are you a person who reads reviews and spoilers before seeing something, or do you want to try and catch it before you hear the stuff?
I go for the reviews that exclude spoilers.
Boo.
Okay.
No.
Thomas is like, I'm all spoilers all the time.
Yeah.
Spoilers only, no reviews.
Yeah, no. See, I don't even go see films because that's how you get them spoiled.
Boom.
Like,
boom. Here's the point. Here's the point.
Spoiler alert. Endgame has Endgame spoilers in it. Just want to put it out there, folks.
I mean, let's not have those then, for sure. That's
it's like
yeah. It must be hard, like, when you're in this business to like just separate the art from like what's going on. Like, I don't know. I like always be comparing like what the actor's doing to how you do it, or how does it go?
I think that could be a thing. I think it's a very poisonous thing that can tear at your confidence and your creativity. So if somebody out there is really struggling with that, I plead with you to give yourself a little more grace. But I remember being 15 and thinking like, I'm already too old to start my acting career because Claire Danes is already doing My So-Called Life, which is clearly the show that I was supposed to be on. So obviously it's too late for me. I'll never, right?
Yeah.
That's not healthy. That's not helpful.
No.
Right. So it's helpful to watch something and imagine like, what might I do with that? Like that's like if you were a musician and you're like, ooh, what would my cover version of that song be? But to sit and watch something and critique it like, oh, I would have done something better. But you didn't, because it wasn't yours. And so that becomes this really toxic voice that's constantly putting you in a place where either you're not enough or everyone else is not enough. And that just starts to shut you down over time. But I will say the longer you stick around, the more friends you have doing stuff. And so the more you can watch something and be like, oh, that was my friend in that scene. And that granted, sometimes it does take you a little bit out of the story, but it also makes everything feel a little bit more bright and a little bit more personal. I love to go back and watch stuff I haven't seen in 10 or 15 years and realize I'm like, oh, I know that person and that person and that, oh, my friends are all working. It's so great.
I get the feeling. My girlfriend hates me for it. We interview so many people, like we end up watching something like, oh, I know a guy who's in that. Shut up, watch the movie.
I've done that as well. I was watching some film with Jim Carrey. I think it was Yes Man. And I was watching that the other day with my girlfriend, with like a Netflix party. And at one point, I saw Spencer Garrett, and we interviewed him. He's a great guy. And I paused the film, and my girlfriend just started like shouting. I'm like, "Why'd you pause the film? What's wrong with him?" I'm like, I know that guy.
Yeah.
It is a funny thing though. Like there are all kinds of things that I've watched just because a friend was in it. I was like, I just want to go support my friend. And so it turns me on to something that I might not have seen otherwise. And that's really cool. And sometimes that's indie stuff. And sometimes it's television shows. And sometimes it's big movies I might not have made time for otherwise. But definitely in gaming for sure. Because I've mentioned I have small children. I have a limit on the amount of time available to me. And so like, there are a lot of games I wouldn't choose only because I don't have the time commitment to get in and play it. Like my husband and I were literally talking last night. We're like, we really need to play The Last of Us 2 because like everybody talked about it. We know everybody in that game and it was such a big deal. And we're not really sure what everybody's so mad about because we have had no minutes to play it because 2 small children. We're like, so maybe in like 2 or 3 years when we have a little more time, we'll be like, oh, you guys, that's really dumb. Laura's awesome. Yeah, I don't know.
I've played the first one. The first one it's such a good game.
It's so good.
I haven't played the second one yet, simply because of how controversial it's been.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think if I play it, I might ruin it for myself. I'm not really sure. I've had friends play it. I've had 2 friends play it, and one of them said they liked it, thought it was great, and the other said it was the worst game they've ever played. So
it's so funny how things can be so binary that way. It's so interesting. Like something can, because it subverts your expectations, is either really satisfying, or it subverts your expectations and you're really mad because you wanted it to serve your expectations. It's it's interesting how that works.
It's really interesting.
All I know is that I love all of those people and I think that they're brilliant, and so eventually I'm going to get around to playing it. We're going to get there. We're going to have time again in our lives someday, and it's going to be amazing.
Don't we have all the time in the world right now?
No.
Not when you have a kid, Jared. Shut up, man.
Well, I know, like if you're working at the same time, that would be.
I watch these stories about people who are like, how are you filling your time? I was like, with a baby and a toddler and full-time work from home and now chickens and my farm. I was like, I have no minutes.
Fair.
So we're going to end the podcast early because, we might give this woman a mental breakdown. But anyway.
I was like, I have an hour to myself where I can just go talk to some people about stuff I love. Cool.
Do you guys do podcasts often?
From time to time, and I always really enjoy it. I love talking about what I do. I love talking about the journey of it. It's, when I imagined my career, this is not what I imagined, partly because I didn't know that I could, and looking back on the journey to get here and what that meant about opening up possibilities for my imagination, for myself and my own life, like that's really exciting. And I hope that people are open to that with whatever path they're in, whether you want to be a game dev or a mechanical engineer or, a comic book artist or a lawyer, like be open to the path that might take you there and be kind to yourself if it doesn't look like a straight line, because spoiler alert, it never does. It's wild to look back. Like my parents really, really limited our television time and our video game time, like really limited it. And that now I get to work in this and I can be proud of the stuff that I create. Like there's almost nothing that, everybody's got a few things, but there's almost nothing that I've made that I'm not proud of. I did a cartoon called Spirit recently that I was so proud of it when it came out, because I know that my niece loves that property, loves that cartoon, and I can send it to my sister and say, now she gets to play. You guys, are you ready for this? Did you read Choose Your Own Adventure books when you were kids?
No.
What? You missed out on the most amazing gift. So there are these books, right, where you read the chapter and at the end it's like, do you do this or do you do this? And then it's like, if you make this choice, turn to page 18. If you make this choice, turn to page 56. So you could read these books over and over and over again. Well, we just did a cartoon that's that.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like, to me, that was such a cool thing where I was like, my niece can sit down and watch this story and actively participate in it. Like, I'm proud of that. Yeah. And you can look at that and say, oh, you did a kid's cartoon. Or you can say, no, we're creating this new kind of storytelling where you can actually deeply engage with it, and that it's accessible to kids and to adults. Like, I think that's really exciting. I love what I do.
I'm glad to hear it. It'd be a different story if we came in here like, oh, it's terrible. Oh my God. But yeah, no, especially because, it's affecting, I guess, one of your nieces or whatever. It's great to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any like preference in when you're doing this work? Like, would you prefer to do voice acting, just normal acting, or?
It's really funny right now. I'm always happy to work on camera. There's something really wonderful about like being in a studio and being on set and that collaborative experience. Like it's just not like anything else. I am really, really loving voice acting right now. Like it's been the last couple of years, the balance of my work has shifted so heavily to voice acting, and it's been such a joy because it's so unrelentingly creative. Because when you're working on film, even when it's digital film, right? There's only a certain amount of time in the day. You have to cut off takes. There's a certain amount of like, you got to hit your marks and you got to get your blocking right. And you've got to get this thing in the can just right. That at a certain point you just have to move on. And the constraints are pretty profound. Yeah. In voice acting, you're still trying to like hit your marks and get the story. But if you have an idea for something you want to try, it's like, yeah, sure. Just try it. Like there's so much space to create something unique and creative that it feels the most like playing of anything I've done in a long time. So right now I love it. And truthfully, the fact that I've been able to do it from home in my home studio during this pandemic is I know how incredibly fortunate I am and how incredibly grateful I am that my husband and I are both voice actors, and the fact that both of us have been able to continue to work when a lot of people have not had that privilege. Even and especially in the entertainment industry, like I know how incredibly lucky we are, and I'm so grateful for that. And getting back to the thing we're talking about, being a woman, like nobody cares how old I am in voiceover. They're like, can you do the job? Cool. Like nobody's like, oh, well, this protagonist is supposed to be 25. So sorry. It's like, well, can you sound 25? Cool.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
The opportunities of who I can be and how I can be are much broader, which is really, really fun. You're not limited to the kind of roles that you look like, which is awesome. And I'm not too tall for any other actor, which is really nice.
No, you said that a fair bit about being too tall. How tall are you? Like 7 foot?
I'm only 5'8". But it's happened more than once where they're like, oh, we really like you, but I'm like, put him in lifts, it'll be fine. No, it's not that I'm so tall, but the couple of times it's come up, it's like, well, I can't do anything about that, so I guess it's just out of my control. Like, all right, fine.
Yeah, no, it must be annoying, like, getting turned down for a role because of something like you couldn't change. Like it's different if you said that the line's wrong or whatever, blah blah blah. Sure. But your height or blah blah blah.
The one that will never not annoy me is when they're like, we just wanted somebody with red hair. I'm like, have you seen the hair dye aisle of a store? Like that's remediable. All right, fine. But everything else, it's like, the truth is, it so rarely is actually one of those things. That's just the thing that's easy to attach to and be like, well, the truth is it was never my job to begin with. It was for somebody else from the start. And it's taken a long time in my career to be really comfortable with that idea. I'm like, if it isn't mine, it wasn't mine. And that's fine. But it is every once in a while kind of funny to think like, oh yeah, no, that's a thing. If your movie star is not tall enough, everyone else is going to be a little bit short too. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
Seems to work okay for Tom Cruise.
I was about to say.
I know there's a thing. He won't let people run beside him in his movies because they'll be taller than him. That's an actual thing. You're not allowed to run beside Tom Cruise. Like someone started doing it once in a film and I'm pretty sure they got fired for it.
Yeah, there are a lot of precautions taken to protect your movie star sometimes.
And
that's all I'm going to say about that.
I think it's weird. Like,
but at the same time, like I worked on a show once where they were like, wait, when I was auditioning for it, they're like, how tall are you? And they're like, oh, thank God, because the female actress that I was going to be opposite of, who was the lead of the show, they're like, she's almost 6 feet tall. So this is great because it affects eye line. Like it was only for, this one scene. It was an important scene, but it was only this one scene. And they didn't want to take away some of the emotional weight of the scene by having to like change camera angles. So they were like, oh, well, that's great. We don't have to put you in 5-inch heels so that you guys can look at each other. this will be fine. Like it was one of those where like it wasn't going to rule me in or rule me out, but it was like, oh, that's one problem we don't have to solve, so that we can focus on the emotional weight of the scene instead of on the technical aspects of the thing. Like that's a real thing, and it's fine.
Yeah. Again, entertainment, I think it's a weird one. It's a weird one what they want sometimes. Sometimes they don't know what they want. I'm convinced most casting directors have a rough estimate, and then they're hoping for the right person to walk in.
Absolutely. Casting is such a hard job because it's exactly that. You get kind of a rough estimate from your producer or your director, from whoever is going to make the ultimate choice. And then you see all of these people and you go, who do I think is the best fit for what I think they're asking for? And then you present those, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't. And then you've got these awful constraints of like, who do the money people think is most valuable, and whose schedules work out? Like one of the reasons that Black Ops was shot so out of order is because we had some celebrities that we had to work around whose schedules dictated when they could be with us. So it was like, well, we have to get that chapter written so that that actor can be available so that we can shoot that thing. So we're not going to worry about what's happening in between just yet, because we've got to get them in so that they can get out to go do some other thing. And I was like, I'm free whenever. You just tell me and I'll show up.
It's amazing the contrast. Like, well, when Sam Worthington did Black Ops, he did all of his lines in one day. Same with Gary Oldman for both World at War and the original Black Ops. It's just, and then by comparison, like someone like our friend James, he'd spend hours and hours in the booth, retrying everything and then doing a mocap as well. And same with yourself.
Yeah. I was on Black Ops for over a year. And that didn't mean every day. Some weeks it was one day, then we'd miss a week, and then we'd be in 2 or 3 days. And some days I was doing mocap, and some days I was, in the voice studio. But I would be surprised if Katie Sackhoff was in for more than a day. I don't know. I didn't get to be there that day. My Battlestar Galactica dreams were crushed. But I'd be really surprised if she was in for more than one day, because she's busy.
Yeah.
I hardly doubt they had, Conor McGregor in the studio when they're filming Infinite Warfare with himself.
I think he was only there for a day.
No,
you
my husband worked on that scene, and he didn't get to work with Conor, and he was so bummed. He was like, what? I wanted to be there so bad.
Is he a big McGregor fan?
He's a big fight fan. Yeah.
Are you looking forward to this weekend?
Probably. I just want to see that kid get punched in the face. Personally, I'm not a mean person, but also but yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out.
I'm looking forward to it. 100%.
Yeah, with McGregor, I feel like, he became a bit of a scumbag for a while. People really did not like him. And he's kind of on a redemption thing. He was so polite in today's press conference.
Was he? I didn't see it.
It made zero sense. I said to Thomas, it's like a different guy.
He was talking about his opponent and talking about how he's going to donate to his charity and sponsor his hot sauce business. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's Conor McGregor we're talking about here, not.
It's funny. Like I like combat sports. I prefer mixed martial arts to boxing, although boxing movies are my hands down favorite subgenre. I love boxing movies.
Rocky.
But I hate the big talkers. It's so weird. Like there's something about the guys who just smack talk for weeks before that always makes me go, like maybe you're good, but like, It's so like I know that it's part of the game and it works. And that's why that's part of why Conor McGregor is so famous. Like nobody in that weight class gets that famous unless something special. But then I'm like, but I don't like to hear all that. But I acknowledge that I would never know who he was if he wasn't doing it. Like it's that weird frisson,
Yeah.
I don't know.
He just got too famous too fast. He was literally in Ireland rags to riches in a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, he does have good taste in suits, though. You can't take that away.
Absolutely.
Very true.
Okay.
His whiskey's pretty nice as well. I'll give him
Is
that.
it?
Oh, yeah.
Tried it.
It's really nice. It's really smooth.
I keep meaning to try it. We haven't tried it yet.
Yeah. Well, I guess power to him. He's going to fight Sunday. We have a UFC fighter on the same day. Should be a cool conversation.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. It's weird some of the variety that you can get for a podcast,
I mean, people have time right now to chat. Like,
Thank
I don't have time
God.
to live my life, but I do have an hour to come chat. So that's good.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a form of escapism. And I think that's the reason most people say, yeah, just, I have an excuse. I can go talk for an hour and chill.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to talk to somebody that you're not in quarantine pod with for a minute.
Yes, it is.
This is going to be a really interesting year to explain in the future. Like I don't know about you guys, but I grew up learning all about the Roaring 20s and the pre-World War I era. I think I'd heard the phrase Spanish flu, but somewhere but it wasn't a significant event in the back of my mind. Like, I certainly didn't have a decade that it was attached to. And now, knowing the circumstances that they went through, it makes the next decade make so much more sense. I'm like, why didn't we learn about that? Would we have all of us collectively fared better if we'd actually, I don't know, learned lessons from history about how to treat each other and how to protect each other during this time? Like, it's going to be interesting to sort of explain this as contemporary history to the kids who are growing up now, or even more the kids who are born in like 5 or 10 years, because it'll all be in this post-COVID world. And like, maybe that means everyone's getting, inoculations every year, and maybe it just will have gone by. Like, I don't know.
I don't think we're going to learn. Unless something big comes again, I don't think we're going to learn.
Yeah.
But no, you have a fair point there. Like, why didn't we learn about those things? I think it's just preparation for the future. Like, we're going to teach our kids about the world wars because we don't want big wars to ever happen again.
Right.
Learning about World War II teaches us that people shouldn't have too much power.
Right.
We shouldn't treat people differently because they're from one group of, I don't know, an ethnic minority of someone. Like, the Nazis were pretty infamous for doing that kind of shit. So it's best we just learn from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Now, like, something like that isn't really anyone's fault. The Spanish flu, it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
So.
But it's interesting because the town where I went to university had really, really strict laws governing mask wearing and going out, and really strict fines that were levied. And, cut to 100 years later, that exact same town are having these big, like, anti-masking events and showing up at city council saying kids should go back to school and it was like, it's literally like, let me just show you a photograph of 100 years ago in this same town. Don't try to tell me that this has never happened before and nobody's ever asked you to do this, because literally when this town was under the same circumstances, everybody was like, yeah, I know, right? If you go out, like, you're fined. Maybe you're going to jail because, like, we got to look out for each other. And now 100 years later, everyone's like, screw you. I'm the most important person. My convenience is more valuable than your health. And it's like,
I think
you didn't even learn from your own neighbors. Okay.
Well, there you go. I suppose everyone just has like their voice now. Like in the past, a lot of them would have been suppressed, like especially women. I don't think their husbands were letting them, as awful as it is, their husbands were letting them, have those kind of opinions.
Yeah, especially
I'm glad to see a big difference now. I'm glad to see there's a big difference now. But or even minorities not being able to voice their opinions. It's rough. Like 100 years.
It's a slow shift, but it's getting better.
Yeah. Well, 100 years ago was pretty awful. Yeah. I'm glad we live now,
Things were significantly worse for all of those categories 100 years ago. We have made positive movement. Hopefully with the energy that's been put toward those things in the last year especially, we'll continue to move forward. There's been a real light shown on the gap between what we think we've accomplished and what's actually changed. So that's hopefully we'll make some positive movement that way.
And with the old new president there, how do you think things are going to change? He's the oldest president of all time.
I love that though. The old new president. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird thing, and it's always risky to put your political views out there, but it's a weird thing. It's not like having a new president is suddenly going to make a miracle happen in America where we're a better, less racist, more egalitarian system. But I do have a lot of hope that more voices will be heard, because it's the most diverse cabinet that any president has ever had. It's the most well-staffed White House that we've ever had on day one. They've, there's already been, they are at least entering with an intention to listen better and to take action on behalf of more than just the vocal majority. And that, I think, makes a difference. There will definitely be imperfect things. There's a lot to repair, but at least they are beginning with the intention of doing better than we have done. And that's a good place to start. And so I'm hopeful that we won't lose momentum on those things and be like, most diverse cabinet, done. My hope is that having an Indigenous woman in the Department of the Interior, she'll say, hi, you have not taken good care of this land, and I'm going to do something about it. And that we'll actually listen to that point of view in a different way than, say, I don't know, an oil baron having that job.
Didn't he sign off on like 17 things yesterday? Like they passed like 17 new laws or whatever. Like that's a lot.
There's a lot of petty that happens on the last days, and it always does. There's always a lot of pardons and a lot of like last minute things where you're trying to
was a little Wayne got pardoned.
And if there's
and didn't Joe Exotic's friends, they got a limo because they thought that he was going to pardon him, and he just didn't.
But don't worry, Lil Wayne got pardoned, so
that's what matters.
That's covered. We've got that handled.
Whew.
Who knows, you guys?
Planet saved. Yeah. No. I don't know.
I don't know. There's a lot of work to do, and if you are a person who cares about other people, there's a lot of active work still to do. But I am hopeful that there are enough people who at least recognize how broad and how deep that work is, that we will start making more progress.
Yeah, well,
that's my hope.
You love to see progress. I think there is some work to be done in the States, in all fairness.
Yeah.
There is some things that we see here. Like we have a different perspective because we're looking in at you guys. It's like all of Europe is looking at America like.
Oh, it's not just Europe, it's the entire world.
What's going on over there?
What's happening with you dum-dums?
You guys are on the big screen.
Sort it out.
We're all getting our popcorn ready. Like it's
yeah.
What got me excited was the idea that Joe Biden and Trump would go on to the Joe Rogan Experience. Because I was like, how is this even possible? How do we live in a world where this could happen? And then Trump was like raring to do it. He was so ready.
Yeah.
And then Biden was probably a bit smarter to not go in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like every generation has that thing where it's like, wait, you're going to do that. And I remember, I don't remember what it was for Reagan because I was small enough that I don't remember, but I remember Bill Clinton going on like nighttime talk shows and everyone was like, oh, he's what? But then it was like, yeah, well, that's a way that you can reach people who may not seek you out otherwise. And that those opportunities continue to shift and where it's going to be. Like, he may not have gone on Joe Rogan, but I did listen to Joe Biden on the Brene Brown podcast. And I was like, oh, well, that was really lovely. Like, you just went on and had a conversation with a person who I respect about, her perspective on power and vulnerability. And that's brave to do. So, he was not my first choice. I'm not going to pretend like he was, but I feel like he is doing everything in his power to be the guy for the moment. And I have a lot of gratitude and respect for that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff to be fixed in the moment. And, fair play to him if he gets it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely wasn't people's first choice.
I think me and Jared say the whole time that if we were in the US, it would have been Bernie.
Every single time.
Goddamn,
every single
that
time.
Guy.
Or Yang Gang. Bernie Bros or Yang Gang.
And here's the thing, like, they had a lot going for them too, and they had a lot of problems, too. Absolutely. And that's the problem with the political system, is their problems aren't necessarily based on them. It's based on how they would have been able to get people on their side. And, it's challenging. Like, I was an Elizabeth Warren voter. And I'm very grateful that she has been really open with her plans, because I was like, she has plans. She has actual concrete ideas about how to do things, that she's been generous with those plans, and a lot of those are being instituted in this administration. I love that Andrew Yang really popularized the idea of a universal basic income, which I think, especially given the incredible stratification of wealth in this country and in other places because of the existence of the internet and how much technology has changed our world, we need to find some way to take out some of the highs and lows, because we've lost the middle class kind of around the world, certainly through America and Western Europe. And, you know, Bernie made it popular to talk about somebody besides yourself as if that was an important thing to do. And I think it is. I think it's really important to go, I am willing to be inconvenienced for something that is more valuable than my today.
Yeah.
And those conversations are so important, and I'm so grateful that they were having them. And I hope that those influences, you know, will meet this moment in history, and that there'll be a little more unity and a little more collective action. And I bet everybody tunes into your podcast to hear my political opinions. So maybe.
Well, in all fairness, we end up with a political talk with nearly everyone, just by accident.
It's just inevitable. That moment, you know.
It just happens. It's just because the times. It didn't happen like before the presidential election was like relevant.
Yeah. Can I tell you guys a really silly story on that same tip? So one of my first potential big breaks. I'm going to name drop. Are you ready? I did a reality show, but not in the way that like it seemed. They tried to pitch it as if all of us were actually like standing in line to do this show. And it was really, my manager was like, do you think maybe you could book this job? Okay, let's go do this show. And it was a show called, I can't believe I'm actually talking about this. It was a show called In Search of the Partridge Family.
No, I've never.
Yes. And basically it was like everybody was competing to be in the new cast of the Partridge Family. This is the show that brought us Emma Stone. I've known her since she was 15. I can't say I still know her now. I wish her well, and I love seeing her out there because I'm like, I'll love your 15-year-old self forever. But on that show, I got to meet David Cassidy, which was very fun for me. And I remember talking to him one day. I was like, so I've been watching some episodes of the Partridge Family. Did you guys know that you were talking about really important political things, or was that just what life was like at the time? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, there were episodes about single mothers, about being unemployed, about political action. There were race episodes. I was like, you were talking about all this stuff. Was that a choice, do you think, on the part of the show to incorporate it into a family-friendly thing, or was that just the 70s? And he was like, I guess it was just the 70s. I mean, we were trying to do good things, but and it was really interesting because I could see him kind of evaluating that moment. And I was glad that I could point it out to him, because I was like, that's important. Like, it was just a sitcom. It was a musical sitcom, but they were talking about really potent things in a very approachable way. And I feel like this moment is kind of like that, where it's like, you kind of can't not talk about it because the world is changing so drastically right now. Also, I got to say that I met David Cassidy in that story. So
there you go. The experience of a lifetime right there.
It's a big win.
But yeah, we're not going to take up any more of your time, Rachel. This has been a pleasure. We actually had a very fun conversation.
That's the story we're ending on. Oh no.
Yeah, that's perfect. It's perfect. Oh my God. Oh, this has been really fun, because like we kind of been moving away from the idea of just interviewing someone of like their entire like acting career, blah blah blah, and just having like a more genuine conversation.
Yeah, it's really nice
letting the audience get to know the person that they're seeing on screen.
I appreciate that. It's really nice to just chat.
So. Yeah. So Rachel, this has been a pleasure. If people want to check you out, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Rachel Kimsey. My website, which I do not update often enough, is rachelkimsey.com. But someday when the world opens back up and I'm doing cons and stuff, that's where all of that will be. That's where I live on the interwebs.
Perfect.
Where you know where to find her now. So thanks everyone for watching, listening, whatever way you found the podcast, and take it handy.
That is.
Top of the morning, lads and ladies. Support for the Awfully Irish podcast is now brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, and you're no longer need the look of the Irish with the ladies. Manscaped just launched in Ireland. We've gone years without using the right tools for the job. You can now be one of the first men in Ireland to experience their life-changing products.
Your balls will thank you.
Get 20% off and free shipping with the code IrishPod at manscaped.com.
That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code IrishPod.